Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm your host, Alan Moore, and I'm excited to have XYPN member Michelle Smalenberger, co-founder of Financial Design Studio based in Illinois, on the show today. Michelle and her husband founded the firm 2 years ago and have grown it from 0 clients to over 80 client households with over $200,000 in revenue in just over 2 years. Michelle has spent her entire career in financial services, spending the first part working at a financial planning firm, which her husband later joined. They ultimately decided to start their own firm to gain the independence and the flexibility they were craving. We talked about what it means to work with your spouse and how they manage the relationship stress that can come with that. We also spent some time talking about how they take care of themselves, given that they are both working in the business, it is growing crazy fast, and they have a young child. Michelle was willing to share some of the things that they do to make it work out so well for the two of them. XYPN's Can't Miss annual conference returns to St. Louis in September 2019. This event is jam-packed with valuable content for new firm launchers and established firm owners alike. Take a much-needed break from working in your business to work on your business and connect with like-minded advisors leading the financial planning movement. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/XYPN live radio to grab your pass today. You do not want to miss this. You can find any of the additional resources that we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/206. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Michelle. Hey, Michelle, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alan.
So let's give listeners sort of an overview of you and your business, where you located, number of clients, when you started the practice, and then we'll dig into the details.
Yeah, so I'm Michelle Smalenberger. We're in Chicago, Illinois, just in the suburbs. And our business, we're starting our 3rd year. So we started January of 17. And currently we have around 80 clients.
Do you have any specific sort of niche or target market that you have found of those clients, sort of similarities?
Sure. So this year, I think, so when we started our business, we said, this just has to work. My husband and I both left the firm that we were at, and we just said, it has to work. And so basically, we didn't start out with a defined niche, but this year, that's been something that we've been working on. So working through the content strategy program, we are definitely developing, I would say, our ideal client profile. I don't think that we have a very defined niche, but we're definitely clarifying who it is that we work with best and who we want to target.
That's awesome. So 2 things you mentioned there. So you did start the firm with your husband.
Yes.
That is going to be a fun conversation to dig into. And then just for clarity for listeners, the content strategy workshop that you mentioned is a new program that we just rolled out for XYPN members, which is a 6-week intensive sort of identifying the person, the avatar that you're talking to, and then designing sort of a content strategy in order to reach those clients. So it's awesome that you're seeing some success with that program.
Yes, absolutely.
So sort of going backwards a little bit, when did you get into financial planning? Has this always been your career path, or did you transition into it later on?
Yeah, so no, I graduated with a degree in financial planning from Kansas State University, 2005. And right after graduating from college, I could either have worked with MetLife or a firm that I came to here in Chicago. And that was the firm that I was really at for 12 or 13 years. So it started right out of college.
Okay. How did you find financial planning when you were in school?
Yes. So I think at the time there were 3 big programs. I want to say Virginia Tech, Texas Tech, and K-State. And there was other programs that were starting to come about. I actually, when I went to college, I first wanted to be an education major. And then someone said, teachers don't make very much. And so I didn't think I could support myself. So then I wanted to be in business management, but someone said that's for men, not for women. And all things ended well because I'm in financial planning. And it was also, I had a couple of jobs during college. I was an usher at the Coliseum, and I was doing all of the bookkeeping for a psychiatrist in town. And so I actually kind of found over time I didn't just like accounting because I wanted the people interaction. And that's where I got that in the ushering job. And so it's really interesting because I feel like financial planning is a great mix of kind of that bookkeeping, accounting mindset, the technical things, but also the fun, social, that ushering job at the Coliseum.
That is awesome. I've never heard financial planning compared to ushering, but
That's right.
to your point, it's those people skills and the
Yeah.
ability to connect with people quickly. And you don't get in ushering, you don't get a second chance, right?
Yes,
It's
you're
just, you
right.
got to be right out of the gate.
Yes.
Yeah. And to your point, graduating with a degree from Manhattan, Kansas, not a lot of firms in the area. So moved up to Chicago. What was your role at that firm sort of starting out?
Yeah, so I started that firm really at the time we were developing document management systems and CRMs. Those were really the big things. So that was, gosh, almost 15 years ago. Those were the big things that firms were starting to do. And I would say that that firm was ahead of a lot of other firms. They wanted to stay ahead of what, the industry was doing. So that was what I was kind of hired in and was going to be helping to choose the document management system, the CRM. And so I got to learn a lot of technology, entering client data, seeing a lot of the behind the scenes work, not a lot of in client meetings. Over time I started, but that's how I started.
Okay. And then sort of what was your career path through that firm in becoming an
Yeah.
advisor?
Yeah. And so then I think just naturally over the years, new projects would come and I wanted to start sitting in client meetings. I was also studying for my CFP. That was something, I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm a good test taker. And so that was something I had to work through to struggle through to get, but it is possible. And so I got that. And really over time, just naturally, I think in working and talking with clients on the phone, some of my first things were making sure that all of the required minimum distributions were done for clients. And so a lot of that practice led up to really being comfortable in front of clients. And then I was also just naturally excited about what I did. And so I was talking about that with friends or serving in a youth group. One of the kids in my youth group, her dad became a client. And it was just people like that. When you talk about what you do and you love it, people are naturally attracted. And so I did start, bringing on some clients because they knew us. And so I think that just naturally morphed over time into me getting more involved as I was also building up that business.
So what was the structure at that firm? Were they your clients? Were they clients of the firms? Was it different for if the firm gave you a client versus, you found a client on your own?
Yeah, so every client was a client of the firm, which I really liked. So anyone who came in, if one person wasn't in, then someone else could help them. And so it was a really nice structure.
But you were responsible for business development, maybe not responsible for, but you did some business development.
Yeah.
How did you find success? Like, did your firm have minimums or sort of a target market?
Sure. Yeah. So we did, I think when I first started there, we did have minimums. And then over time, it really depended. So I wouldn't say a hard, fast minimum. So we did not. So, and then there were definitely, I think, and this is what we're going through in our business now. I don't know that, I think we could define who that client was. We could describe who the client was that we wanted to work with, but it wasn't something like it's only dentists or it's only doctors. And so while we did have some of those, it wasn't clearly defined. So yeah, no hard, fast minimum, no really set, clear niche.
But there were some level of minimums, right? Or it sounds like there was something. Like what
Yes.
I guess what I'm really trying to ask, just out of curiosity, is like, one thing that we see is, when you're in your 20s or early 30s, it's hard to go out and get a $500,000 or $1 million client. Just because they tend to be older, it's hard to find those folks and connect with them. So how did you find success finding clients that met the firm's profile of an ideal client?
Yeah. So as I had mentioned, like there were some, parents, students I was working with, or one thing to this firm was very great about giving opportunity. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces to my success as a planner over the years is that, so there was a point in time, I want to say maybe 7 or 8 years ago, where I wanted to be able to work with people who were my age. And so we came up with a program that would serve, we called it the Young Professional Program. And so it was really kind of comprised of me asking a lot of my friends what would be helpful. And that was younger people. And so we basically developed an offering that we could work with those clients in that age. And it also then could be offered to grandkids or, kids of some of our older clients. So it became something to where I could work with people and really start to, kind of get some clients who were my age, and then also really help the longevity of the firm. So, we were getting younger clients. So now we had a great mix of ages of clients and also just advisor and team.
So at some point in this process, you met your husband because it
Yes.
sounds like he was at that firm. So how did the two of you meet?
Yeah, so we actually met because we sat next to each other in church. And I had moved to Chicago, so I didn't really know anyone. And so we, just sat next to each other, kept talking. And I think one of the interesting things that's funny, but when we started talking, one of the things I was so excited about financial planning, and I just talked about it a lot. I liked the firm I was at. And so you can tell I talked about it a lot. And he was in accounting. So his background is kind of tax prep, accounting. He's an enrolled agent. And so that was something we had in common. And so really, since we met, we've always kind of talked about like having our own business, whether that's, a part of a bigger business, or I think it's something that we've just always talked about.
And so I think I missed it. Did he end up working at the firm, or you said his background was accounting?
Yes. Yeah. So for the first 10 years that I was at that firm, he was in another firm. He was doing tax prep. He was working with accountants, actually on the accounting side. Then he came on board to that firm, and his role was really kind of to do tax planning, to really kind of beef up a lot of the tax planning that we were providing to clients. So he came on board, and he was there for about 5 years before we left. And, the thought, I think, over time was that we would be the succession plan. So that was some of the thinking, in leading to that decision too.
So, I remember when I left my first firm, everyone said, don't leave the golden, don't kill the golden goose, right? Like you're in the perfect position. You're going to take over this big firm, and you're going to have all the equity, and it's going to be a buyout, and then you don't have to come up with cash, and you don't have to go get clients. Like you're in the perfect position from the outside. And so I guess what was it that sort of drove the decision to say, hey, I am ready to. My path isn't going to be buying this firm. My path is going to be starting my own.
Yeah. I think over the course of the time that I was at that firm, and again, had a ton of opportunity, and it was taught. And the owner always said, if this isn't the place you're going to be forever, I hope you leave better than when you came. So I hope that you've learned. I hope that we've built into you and taught you things. And so he always believed that, which I'm grateful for. And I think for us, it was really it was a time with our family. We have a young daughter. And so I think, just kind of maybe some of that flexibility. I think just what we were thinking as we looked forward, we didn't want to be able to tell ourselves or say to ourselves, why didn't we, or we should have, started our own firm or this or that. And I think even 6 months before that, I had kind of even said, I don't even think it's possible to start your own firm. I don't think people can really do this. I don't think we can do this. And so it was very much a quick change, I think, in mentality, and then even getting signed up with XYPN. I think it was just maybe something in us that we believed, okay, we can do this. And we had proven that we could do this over the years with creating programs for clients, but then also bringing in clients. So I think that we knew that we could, but it was just us believing in that. And so it was really just that it was time for our family. And so that's kind of, there was nothing that happened, nothing happened that really, spurred that decision. It was just, it's time for us. And we don't want to look back and say, why didn't we? So.
Fair enough. And I remember you and I and your husband, I think, talked at a Schwab conference, maybe, or FPA conference. It was Schwab Impact in Boston.
Probably,
anyway,
yes.
And I remember having that conversation around just like that this is possible, and is this the path you want to go? So cool to see that come to fruition.
Absolutely.
So what was the transition process like then to leave? Were you able to bring some clients over? Did you hang out for a time period, sort of help with that transition? Sort of what did that part of the process look like?
Yeah. So I think once we decided, I'm a person who, once I decide something, I can't really pretend that something isn't as I'm thinking in the back of my mind or planning over here on the side. I think that's just my personality. And so once we decided, we told the owner, and then I think we all just kind of agreed that that we would, kind of do it quickly. So, I think it was within a week, and we definitely were willing to help, to answer any questions, to transition things. But the team was very capable of taking on things. Everyone had, roles where they could do, the pieces that they needed to. And so again, because clients were members of the firm, I think we had that team built in, and that was actually functioning well. So it wasn't dependent on one person. they were able to, move forward and we were able to. So I want to say it was within a week. And then after that, we did not reach out to any clients. When we left, we really wanted everyone to succeed. So whether that was clients, whether that was the firm owner, we wanted his business to succeed. We didn't want to ruin his in the process of starting ours. And it's hard to say that, in the midst of those hard decisions and when, those are your true feelings, but you're saying I'm leaving. And that was difficult. And I remember going through something that I call the process of being misunderstood, in that you're saying we're leaving and there was nothing that happened, but people, you can't go back and tell every person the whys and the whats. And so I just remember really just believing that, we're going to say the best of each other. We're never going to say anything bad, and we're going to move forward. It's just time, and we want to build our own firm. So everything went great. We did not reach out to people. People did reach out to us, but we just wanted to be findable. We just wanted our business to be up and running so that we had marketing, we had a website where people could find us if they wanted to, because we knew those relationships were there. And those were, people that we knew and we had brought them to the firm. So we knew that there would probably be that desire from some of the clients. But again, we wanted everyone to succeed.
So you started basically from scratch. And so when was this timeline wise?
Yeah. So this was January of 17. And I think we joined XYPN at that same time. So once we were ready to actually launch, and then we were taking on new clients or able to register and everything by March 1st. So basically 2 months later, we had everything done. And I think the reason that we were able to do that so quickly was because when I was at that firm, I worked with a lot of the vendors, the software vendors, Schwab, different people like that. And so I had personal relationships with them. So I knew I could reach out and just kind of say, here's where we're at. I knew what we needed. And so I think from that point of view, coming up through the operations side really did help us in launching our firm quickly.
That's the part of our jobs when we get, when we first start out and we get into a financial planning firm that I don't think anyone really appreciates. It's like, oh, well, I don't really want to do this paperwork, or I don't care about this. This is, I want to be a financial planner. I don't want to learn how to run operations. But,
yeah.
People will ask me, Alan, how do I best prepare myself to start a firm one day? And that's that's a question sometimes, younger advisors will ask. And my recommendation is typically go to a small firm and do every job.
Yeah.
Because you do. And when you run your own business, you don't have the luxury of saying like, oh, someone else will do the paperwork. Oh, someone else will pick the software. Like, you get to do it.
Yeah.
And so having that opportunity and learning about the tools and the resources and the operations of the business, and, trying to go to T3 or your custodial conference or whatever, go learn the technology that's out there. Even if your owner won't implement it, like, be connected with those, with that world, because otherwise you get stuck where you go to launch a firm and you don't know anything because you've just been heads down for the last 10 years. So
yes. And I'll share one story. So in that position, there were times where over the years, I think they say kind of after your 3-year mark, or there's different standard times, I think, in careers where you kind of get the itch and you may want to go somewhere else. And I won't say that, there weren't days where I was like, okay, I wish I was doing more of this or that, early in my career. There were people, so some software vendors that were mentors to me. And I remember learning how to talk to the advisors or the decision makers in our firm. So for example, one was big picture, very much, what's the vision for this? How is this going to help clients? Okay. And the other one was more, cost. What's the cost? What's the expense? What's our profitability? And so I knew that they listened to different things. And this was something my mentor was explaining to me. And she said, you have to kind of talk to him this way and talk to him this way. And in doing that, I know I wanted to roll out like mind mapping. So that was a technology that I had seen at a conference to help clients kind of see the big picture. And so I brought it up as an idea. And again, they were very open to listening to ideas. And it was kind of at a stage where they were like, I don't know, I don't know what we should do. It kind of costs. And I said, what, the training for this is $2,500. How about I call a client? And I know the client I'm going to call. And if he's willing and he wants me to do this for his family, how about we do it? And we'll charge for this. So if in the end it doesn't work, we just keep his up. We don't have to roll it out to all the clients, but we charge for it. And so he was that client, and they said, okay. And so then that client, I called him, he was boarding a plane, and he's like, I can't see what you sent me, but it sounds amazing. So let's do it. And so I went to the training, but I in that moment had to have this spur of mind thought to say, what if I just find one client who's willing to pay for it? And so there were times like that I would have to say something, and I would kind of have to, instead of sitting back and just saying, okay, and accepting that decision, what was a way that I could communicate with them to get them to see in the big picture, this is going to help the firm. And what if we just do this? And so we did start doing mind mapping for clients, but I know that was something that I had to say and kind of be willing to go out on a limb and offer that as a strategy. So that's part of some of, the progression of my career too, is I think that I was willing to say some things or say, okay, how do I get them to see that this is where we're trying to go, even though they were very open-minded?
It's a great point that it's really easy when you're in that position to just sort of pout and say like, well, yeah, they don't ever let me do anything. But to be able to come in with a strategy, and as a business owner, when it's halfway through the year and you have your annual budget sort of mapped out, like $2,500, I felt like when I was an employee, $2,500 didn't feel like a big deal. And now someone's like, can I have $15? And I'm like, no. So,
yes.
It is a lot that's a lot of money. And so, coming in with a strategy for, hey, I'm not thinking about this just in a selfish way. I'm thinking about this from a business perspective and how, we can at least cover costs, but get an ROI on this. I appreciate that from my team members. And I think, most business owners do as well.
Absolutely.
So are you still using mind mapping in your planning practice?
We do. Yes. Yeah.
So this is something I'm hearing more and more advisors leveraging mind mapping. So can you just talk to me about how, like when you do the mind map, is it a one-time thing versus an ongoing? How do you keep the information updated? What system do you use? Just sort of an overview.
Yes. Yeah. So currently we use Mind Genius. So that's the software. Ours is a desktop version, so it's not online. And so there's a lot of different purposeful reasons of how we do it. Every client gets a mind map. And so in our first service is the financial organization package. And so we use the mind map basically to show clients everything that they have. So we put all their insurance, investments, all those things on there. And so all of the information goes there. We attach documents. And so for that purpose, we don't necessarily want it to be online, because if there was a document that's out there online, people can see. And so it's desktop version. So we attach everything, we organize it for them. So we basically say, you bring all of the documents or, provide the documents for data gathering, and then we build the mind map. The great thing about the mind map is that there's usually one person in the couple who is maybe managing more of the money. So even day to day versus, the investments, usually one person in the couple knows the investment picture and one knows the day to day spending. That's how it seems anyway. And so once we do the mind map, everyone is put on the same page, because usually it typically tends to be the husband, but it's not always, that they may see kind of more of like a net worth statement style. So in this account, I have this amount. It's very linear. In this account, I have this amount. On the mind map, it's more structural. So it's more, we have these 10 accounts and here's how they're titled. And here on the other side is your insurance and your estate planning. And this is what's protecting everything on the other side. So it really helps us to be able to explain and get them both to understand the purposes, instead of just looking at the dollar amounts, but we're understanding the structure of their financial plan that they've created.
Yeah, and to that point, a lot of people are visual. Some of us are more auditory, but with financial matters, like we're visual, and so just being able to see your financial picture, it's sort of like seeing a net worth statement with assets and liabilities and net worth versus just like being told what your net worth is. It's just such a powerful tool. I never used it as a planner, but like I said, I'm seeing more and more advisors leveraging it. It seems like it's a really effective tool.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. I think it is.
And how are you keeping the information up to date on an ongoing basis? Is there some sort of automatic data feed? Or are you updating it, every time?
Yeah. So right now we're updating it. So that's the manual part. I would say this year, there's a couple things that we're working on. One is defining kind of that ideal client profile. The other is really automating things, getting systems to talk to each other. So technologies to talk to each other, where we can enter data in one place and it's going to go to all of these places. As we've started our firm in the beginning, it's all been manual. And so now we're really saying, this is what we're using. How does it all talk? So that's where we're going. There's a lot of different mind mapping softwares out there. I know even to like Asset Map is, a mind mapping, and it connects things to it. And so if you don't have any experience with mind mapping, that may be a great place to start. So you really want to look at, what is it that you're trying to accomplish with this? how much time do you have to put into it? Because I know some other advisors, it's just very basic in nature. It's not like we put a lot of detail. For example, we'll put your property and casualty details on there and we'll say, this is your limits of liability or coverage, because we want to help them understand and actually know what that means on their insurance policy. But some people will just kind of list it, as, okay, you have that property and casualty, homeowners, auto. So it really depends the level you want to go to. And I think that will affect what system you use and whether you want it to be online, whether you want it to be, ours is a desktop. So then it's, how do we share this with clients? And is this for the purpose of the client or is it for our purpose? And so these are some of the decisions I think you have to think through when you're trying to use it. But there are a lot of great systems that have trials out there. So even Mind Genius, you can start to use it and kind of build it. I think mind mapping started for the education industry, like people who were trying to write a book, for example, and they just have a bunch of thoughts that they want in their book. And then they can go back in the branches. You can all just move around one topic. So you could say, okay, this is going to be chapter 1. And you just, click and drag them to where they belong. So it's more for if you just want to create and get ideas out there and connect them later. So.
Yeah, I remember my English teacher used to call it the spider web, and it was like, what's the topic? And then what are the things connected to the core topic? And then off of that, what are the things connected? And that was the way that I learned to frame stories and to frame, how we were going to write a paper or whatever. So anyway, well, no, that's really cool. I love the visual nature of it. I think, it's always a challenge for, what tools do you invest in? Which ones do you not? And your version, a desktop version, I think was like a one-time licensing fee, right? I think when I looked at it in the past.
Exactly. You're
so
right.
A lot cheaper, but maybe it doesn't come with the integrations that like something like an asset map has. So you started the business just over 2 years ago and you have 80 clients. You just came to XYPN Pause, which is our program for our more experienced members. I believe you had to have at least 150,000 in revenue this year.
Yeah, I think so.
And basically that's an opportunity to sort of pause, as the name implies, and really think about what you want to do with your business. So I want to talk about that here in a minute, but that means you have 150,000 revenue. So can you share sort of where you're at revenue wise with the business?
Sure. Yeah. So when we started, I think I naively had this goal that I wanted to double in size every year for 5 years. And again, I say naively because that sounded great. But last year, so our first year, we were right around 70,000 in revenue. And that was kind of like 3/4 of the year that first year. And then last year when we ended, we were just above that 150. And so we basically doubled our revenue. Now, when we started out, I said, let's double our AUM. But naturally, I think we realized that, that's not a great measure because AUM doesn't tell the whole story. And so we switched that to be revenue. That's kind of how we're looking at some of our growth on a big picture. So right now we're basically around 200 on an annual basis as we sit today, but I feel like that keeps growing as new clients come on board. So that's exciting.
So 0 to 200,000 in 26 months, which is, I'll say, astronomical, if you will. That's just like rocket growth. So 80 client households. Where have you found success in getting new clients coming in the door? What's working for you from a marketing standpoint?
Yeah, it's funny because in the beginning, I think I had this kind of like naturalistic progression. So I'd say in the beginning, it was like anyone who we already knew who wants to work with us, friends, family. Then it became, referrals of, those new clients that came on board, their friends, their family. And then we started to notice that it was new prospects. So whether that was from the XYPN portal, NAPFA, and then now it's just people who just Google us and find us. So in the beginning, we just wanted to be findable. And so we, in our first year, did spend a decent amount of money on video. So we do a lot of video. We do one new video every week at least. We batch record them. So that was one thing that when we started, we said we want to be findable. And when people find us, we want them to be able to hear us talk. We want them to get to know us quickly so that when they come in the door, we're not doing a lot of meet and greet meetings or initial consultations, but rather they have already heard us. They know. And those videos also kind of showed our expertise. So we could talk about topics. And I know a lot of people say, with video, what do I talk about? And I just say, just talk about what you know. Even if there's a video already out there about it, they haven't heard you say it. We just started with those things and have gotten more comfortable over time.
So do you feel like the videos really drove SEO and people finding you? Because, again, like to have 80 clients, you have to have met with 160 or 200 prospects, I assume. I mean, like that is a lot of people. I mean, that's 10, 8 to 10 people a month are finding you in some of these ways. So
yes. Yeah. So this year, I would say in the past month, we've just started tracking our prospective clients since, we started. So when we started, we were a generalist. We didn't have a niche. And we just said, this just has to work. So we want to be findable. We want to have marketing. We want to have pieces of content out there. So now we're going back. The prospective number that you mentioned, that's about right. So our close ratio is kind of around 68%. That's about what it is now. And so over that time, I think because the people that came in, they could see us in video format. I mean, there was one person who came in, I said, hi, I'm Michelle. And, Steve said, hi, I'm Steve. And he's like, I know, I've already seen all your videos. And, just really nice and friendly. And, it just really proved to me that that's what we're doing. We're meeting them before they come in. We had another new client who came on early when we started doing video, and they were looking for an advisor, a younger couple. And they said, we were looking between you and another advisor and we couldn't decide. And so we just said, let's go with the one with the videos. And it was interesting because those two were actually in news production in their previous careers. So that was something that they knew something about. But the only differentiating factor that they said was, let's go with the one with the videos. And so that early on told me, because people will say, what's the ROI? Are you really getting people? I don't think you can truly measure because we have, analytics from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from Google Analytics, from your website. You get analytics from all over. And so I don't know that you can truly measure the value of all of those. And you can, we absolutely ask, where people are coming from. But I really think that those videos, they say that people have to see you or hear you so many times before they actually decide to work with you. And those are just points of touch that they're hearing us. And so I think that, that's something I think it's just really been positive for us.
So how often are you releasing a video at this point?
Yeah. So we do one every Tuesday. So every week we're doing one a week.
Okay. And how often are you recording? Because you said you tend to batch record.
Yes. So we record once a month and we record 8 videos at that time. And it takes around 2 to 3 hours. So it doesn't really take a long time. Now we've got a process and a system and we're much more comfortable with it. In the beginning, it was more painful because it was like, okay, we need to get one done for next week and then the next week. So that's definitely, a couple of years in, we're much more comfortable. And now we're like 4 months ahead. So now we're able to stay ahead of those to keep those dictated, putting them on the website, getting them posted.
And do you have a video editor or a videographer or a team that you're using, or do y'all do this in-house?
No. So we create all of our ideas. We kind of put the ideas together. We use what's called a light board. So it's kind of a fun way to be able to write and share ideas. And we have someone who comes and records it. And then he also edits them and then uploads them. And then up until recently, I was doing all the dictation and realized that wasn't worth my time. And so we do have someone who helps us with the scheduling. So we do a video every Tuesday, and then every Friday I kind of write it's a short market. Here's what happened in the markets this week, just so people who aren't following their accounts, which we don't necessarily want them to be looking daily, they can just read this and see, here's what happened this week and here's how it affects me. So I send that to her and she is the one who posts that for us. So we're really just creating content at this point, and then they're doing the posting and the editing.
Okay. Yeah, much better use of time.
Yeah, and it definitely makes a big difference in the ability of how much we're able to do because they're really doing the time-consuming parts where we're just stepping in, hit record, and then we're stepping out. So it makes a big difference.
So it sounds like the videos have been a really powerful inbound marketing tool. Still, we're getting, 12 to 15 prospects a month coming in the door. Are there other things that you can share that are working that other advisors could, think about implementing in their practice? Yeah.
So what I would say is anytime you create a piece, make it something. So a lot of our pieces that we've created they're not time stamped in that there are some that when they're around tax planning or legislation changes, but a lot of them are just general, what's an HSA? Are you packing your power of attorney as you're traveling this summer? They're kind of fun ways to just talk about, documents or maybe things that people would consider boring. But that's something that we could use. So we're not at the point where we're recycling any content yet, but if we needed to, we absolutely could. And so I would say when you're creating something, try to make it general. So any videos that we're doing, we're able to post. So XYPN, you guys have a list that you send out to consumers that they can, those blogs, the good financial reads. And so that's something that I submit, our written blogs, our video blogs, kind of in batches. I'll submit those. So then that's going out to your audience. When I'm, on a podcast or something, there's some different groups, networking groups that we're involved with. And not that we get a lot of referrals from people like that, but there are absolutely some. And, I've been on some of their podcasts, things like that. So anytime that you can get your name out there and you can talk about, here's what we're doing, all of that, like sharing through our social media. So Facebook, LinkedIn, sharing those things so that you're really kind of building up and people know that you're out there because you just want them to be able to find you. And so, going to actually look at Google, what do you see about yourself? All of those, just some really basic things, but what is it that people see of you when they do go to try and find you?
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's just mind blowing the amount of prospects and just the client flow that you've had, which is amazing.
Sure. And, Alan, I would actually say in looking at our prospect numbers and that you're mentioning that's something that in looking at our close ratio, these are now leading to other questions of kind of where we're going forward and saying, okay, is our close ratio too high? Should we be raising our prices? Should we be doing some of these things? Should we be really targeting that ideal client profile? And so that is where I'm looking forward and in this content strategy and then the pause business strategy, those two have been perfect timing for us to say, where's our business going? We're excited for that. We want to move forward. But what is it that, is next? And how do we use this information to make changes accordingly so our business is profitable, but also so that we're able to scale it and still, be efficient?
So what are your expectations for some of the things that may change based on the work that you've been doing?
Sure. So I do think over the last 2 years, in starting as kind of more of a generalist and saying we don't have a clear, this is who we're targeting, whether that's an occupation or an age, I would say that now we're able to look back. And so this past year, we've started to say, here's all of our clients. What are the things that really make it fun to work with them? And then what are the planning opportunities that we're doing with them? And so there are some really clear common threads between every client, whatever their age or career. So tax planning is one large one that I think all clients need at some level. And then others are that there's kind of two age groups. One tend to be around our age. I think just because we are naturally attracted to them, we're in a similar life stage. But then it's those who are near retirement or kind of considering and in retirement. So we've got these two age groups that I think the tax planning really becomes important for as we're accumulating. How do we do that? What's the structure and the frequency? And then also on the other side of now we're decumulating. What's the structure and the frequency and where do I take from? And I think we also like having not just people our age, but also people who are wiser, more experienced. They have a lot of knowledge that we want to learn from them just in life in general. And so I think that's maybe those two groups are what we're kind of naturally attracted to for those reasons. So those are definitely two groups that we've pulled out saying these are great ones that tend to be, common clients, tax planning. And then in the content marketing strategy workshop, there's one I'm trying to define who is it that we like to work with? And here's how I said it. And this may resonate with a lot of people. We like clients who they could be the millionaire next door. They could buy the Tesla if they want to, but they don't necessarily do it. They don't necessarily want you to know that they have a lot of money, but they are just fine financially. And so I kind of identified it as that. It's like they could be the millionaire next door. They could buy all those things, but they don't. And so that's something that's kind of, it does define those people we like to work with in one way. And so that's one line that I added as we were going through what makes this person we like working with them.
That's fantastic. One thing you've mentioned a couple times is around tax. And obviously with your husband being an accountant and that background, can you talk about how your service or how you differentiate your service with the tax planning or preparation and that expertise?
Yeah. So we do a lot of tax planning kind of, before the end of the year. Here's what the return looks like, projected out so that when April comes, there's no surprises. This year, Steve did work with an accountant. So we're kind of seeing how that's going if we want to make tax prep part of our business going forward. So that's something we've always entertained. It's just always do we really want to do this? And so that's something we're considering with an accountant. We'll see. I'm not sure. We'll see where that goes. And then also just going forward, we do want our business to be larger than ourselves. And so what does that look like? Is that hiring and training? Is that, maybe merging with other XYPN advisors? Those are just things we're throwing around and just kind of considering right now.
Okay. So switching gears a little bit, because I just have to ask, and I know some listeners are thinking, I could never work with my significant other or my spouse.
Sure.
And I've always felt like you can have an amazing, healthy relationship, and some couples are meant to work together and some couples are not meant to work together. So one, how did you make the decision to work together and feel good about that it was a good decision for the business and for your relationship?
Yeah. So I think, so as I mentioned, kind of when we first met, I think that we both enjoyed talking about finance. We like shows like Shark Tank or The Profit, where there's business strategy and what should they do. And we just like talking about those types of things. And so I think just naturally, we talked about these things at home. When we were both working in different places, you come home and you talk to your spouse, how was your day? And here's what happened. And, you want to talk that through with each other. One of the things that we found when we started working together is that we didn't have to explain to each other about our day. We just came home and we just continued on with the rest of the day because there was, we knew what happened. And so that was definitely a benefit because I think a lot of people say, leave work at work, don't bring it home. And so it's funny, but you almost do leave work at work when you work with your spouse. So that was kind of nice. I think that what Steve does in his background and his skills and expertise is different than mine. So his is in accounting, and that's different enough from financial planning. So in the beginning, we kind of joked that accountants look backwards, kind of saying, here's the details from last year. Now we're recording that on the tax return. And I know that is not true of all accountants, but that's your typical thought of an accountant. And then financial planning is more forward looking. What's the projection of how this is going to look in 10, 30 years? And so I think that the difference of both of those is just enough that we could literally be working side by side all day and we wouldn't necessarily have to talk to each other because we're working on different things. And so then it's just, okay, now we're building the plan. Okay, now how does this work? And so it's kind of fun because we're strategizing. Okay, well, here, can you change that in the tax software? And I'll look over here. And so it actually becomes, a fun teamwork strategy puzzle in the end. But I think because it's different enough and I'm more of a kind of looking forward, big picture. I move quickly, I think quickly, which has its downfalls. And Steve is more of the, okay, let's analyze, let's be thorough, let's be thoughtful, let's take our time, which naturally those work really well together. Now, obviously, there's times where we're kind of like, okay, I need to go in the other room. But for the most part, I think they really complement each other. So then we're able to work as a team to actually make progress ahead.
So how do you split duties of running the business? So I can see it from the financial planning side, but what about the actual running of the business, onboarding a new client, opening accounts, the finances, the business decisions, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we each, I think, kind of stick to our strength. So Steve does a lot of he would do more of the kind of data entry, setting up of accounts, whether that's e-money, share file, things like that. I do more of the investment account opening, Schwab. Steve will do more of the business bookkeeping. So he keeps the business books, but then we'll both get together and say, at the end of the year or towards the end of the year, what's the budget for next year? What do we want to assume? And really looking at the strategy. So as far as those things, yeah, it's pretty clearly defined where, Steve has his parts. And I think that some of it's natural, like accounting, maybe he likes, kind of that data entry, filling in the blanks. He likes to keep things neat and have a nice process. And I don't tend to function well like that, even though I should. And so that works great because he keeps us where we should be. And then more with kind of the content strategy, the marketing, things like that, I can kind of think big picture and think forward on those things.
So you mentioned earlier, we were talking about pause and the opportunity to come and just sort of, the old cliche of work on the business, not in the business, and just take some time to really think about it. You also mentioned earlier that the plan is to grow the business beyond the two of you. So what are y'all looking at as sort of the goal of what you want this business to become?
Sure. Yeah. So we've always wanted a business to be bigger than ourselves. So meaning that for clients, there's continuity if something happened to us. I think one of the things we're noticing too, So some of these decisions or considerations are being driven by, things you'll commonly hear from clients or prospects. And so, for example, some, larger prospective clients, they've started asking more recently, okay, it's the two of you, but what if something happens? And I think some of those things, they don't necessarily hold them back from becoming clients, but they are real concerns that we want to address and we want them to feel comfortable about. And at the same time, I think I'm starting to kind of feel the weight of it's all on us. And while we don't do, every little thing, we do have people helping with, video and scheduling of content, things like that. I think we're ready to say, okay, we want to have some team members help so that we don't feel like we're doing everything. And there's just a weight, I think, that comes with that. Now, I think that you can definitely have a solo firm and stay like that. But I think just naturally, our personalities, we want to grow something a little bit bigger so that we have a team of people and we're all growing collectively together and we're all succeeding together. So it's not just us. I think we've just always thought that. We've never had, a sense where we just wanted to be us and we wanted to be able to, kind of have this routine. So that's something we've always had. And we liked, maybe it was, somewhat driven by the firm that we were at initially where it was a team. And so it was a lot more individual. So it wasn't just us. So that could have been some of it that's driving that, I think that we liked that size of a firm. So I see us getting larger or growing large enough. And some of my concern in the beginning was that we would grow too fast because we want to do it well. We want to be able to take care of our existing clients, but also bring new clients on board and have everyone have a good experience. So not say, it might take a while for them to respond. And that was helpful in the pause conference because as we start looking at some of these business models and you say, great, as we add 5 more clients, but we don't add any more advisors, what starts to suffer? Okay, great. Our bank account might go higher. However, maybe our reputation is kind of dropping off a little bit. Like, how do these factors affect each other? And at what level should we be adding other people? And so these are all factors that are kind of driving us to say, okay, we need to start considering what the different options are and what do we feel like we want to do now? Do we feel like we want to hire and train, or do we want to team up with people who have expertise in other areas that we don't?
So do you have a vision for how big you want the firm to be, whether that's revenue or number of clients, number of team members?
Yeah. So I would say in the midterm, so I would say over the next 5 years, I would say a revenue goal is to at least be over $1 million in revenue. Beyond that, at least I don't know like how to say like what I want it to get to. However, I will say this. I don't want to have a firm that's too large that I don't know every client. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't work with every client, me or, the other advisors in the firm, but I want to be able to know everyone and know their name. And so that's where, there are regional firms or, these other firms that are really large. I don't want to get to that scale because I always want to be able to know them. So that's at the moment how I'm defining kind of the scale of what we want to grow to. It's really scientific, I know.
No, I really like that definition because, we have found, and you work through some of this at Paul's, but we have found that there's sort of 3 trajectories that advisors are on. They either want to stay solo and they want it to stay very small where they do all the planning work and it's just them. We've historically talked about, I want to grow big. I want to grow a big firm. And we've stopped there. But I don't think that's accurate because I think you can want to grow really big and go be an enterprise and take over the world and be a regional firm. And that's awesome. But then there's this middle ground and we call them the small giants. And it's based on the book Small Giants of companies who choose to grow well instead of big. Mm-hmm. And that's really what you're talking about, where, you're able to grow a business big enough that it is a business, but you're still completely connected to the end client, the end consumer, and mm-hmm. there will be a tipping point where you'll recognize that you can't continue to grow your client base and continue to provide that level of service that you want to personally be able to provide. The firm can provide it, but if you want to be able to personally provide it, that'll sort of cap your growth, whatever number that is.
Yeah. And I think that's how, so I think when everybody starts their firm, they naturally have something that they are good at. So maybe that's investments. And that's the thing that you focus a lot of your time on. Maybe it's the marketing side, like we spent a little bit more time on, whatever that is. I think everybody kind of focuses a good chunk of time on one part of the business. And then later, after you get some clients and you start making some progress, then you go back and say, okay, I really need to focus on these areas that I didn't before. And I think that's what we're finding is we didn't do a ton of definition of who that ideal client profile was in the beginning. And now we're saying, you know what? as we scale, if we don't want to grow too fast, then how do we kind of, cap some of this? How do we kind of slow some of the growth? Maybe maybe that's by just increasing prices. There's a variety of things we could do, but are there things that we do, and is it the right time? I think we've decided not yet, but there are times where you naturally look back. And when we started as, just kind of saying, hey, we don't have a niche, I think we're looking back and we're saying, but we do need to define a little more clearly who it is that we work best with, because there are just some prospective clients that come in that I'll refer to another XYPN advisor or someone else that I know has an expertise in that area, and it is not worth my time, and I don't have the expertise to help them. And so I think it's that over time is just natural, where you have to, and I will say we're doing it after 2 years, but I think we're going to do it again, in another 2 years or year, and say, wait, we need to, kind of keep thinning down who really is that ideal client. And I think that's just a natural thing as you grow.
Totally agree. What is your current fee structure and sort of service model? And sort of just trying to get an idea of it's sort of penciling in like million in revenue, how many clients you want to be able to serve. So therefore, what does your fee need to be? So I'm just curious if that's in line. So what's sort of your fee structure at this point?
Yeah. So we have two main ways. So we have one-time packages where we just have $1,000 financial organization. Basically, you just want to make sure everything's organized, and we give you recommendations on some basic things that you can take and do. And then $2,500 for more. It's a comprehensive plan. So that includes projections, using e-money, things like that. So that's kind of everything. And after that, so those are one-time packages. That's usually where people tend to start. They at least have to do the first one if they're a new client. And then after that, people tend to move to assets under management. So we just do AUM fee structure. And so then they just move into that. Or you could just do hourly, where you meet, maybe once a year for a couple of hours. So you can really choose what you want it to be, because we want you to be comfortable in getting the services that you need. So that's how we're currently set up.
And do you foresee any changes with that in order to be able to hit the goals that you want to be able to hit, or are you happy with that structure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think that in time, I do believe that because the value of what we're creating on the plans, I absolutely think we will increase our fees, because we know we're providing a lot of value. And so that is something I think we will do on the one-time packages at some point. And then the AUM, I think we're very comfortable with those percentages and where they're set. One thing that I always toss around is I am just not really good at selling the monthly retainer model. I don't know what it is. And I honestly think that I don't believe in it myself, and I haven't defined, this is what it looks like. Okay, yeah, that's great. And so that's why I think we're also in Illinois, and I don't think it's exactly a welcome service. So I don't think that regulators quite like it yet. So that's why we have kind of the one time and the AUM. But that is one thing that I always kind of go back and forth with. Should we be doing that? I think one reason in the beginning we didn't do the retainer model was because we felt like when people come in, they have immediate questions that they want answered, and we want to answer those for them. We don't want to, have to structure it over the course of the year. And not that you have to if you do the retainer model, but I don't think that I really know how to do that model well yet to where I'm able to sell it, because we're not, because people just usually choose the one time or the AUM. So that's one thing that I could see at some point, maybe adding in some way. But for right now, I think it'd probably just be an increase in the one-time packages, and then letting, clients choose if they want to continue with the AUM.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I will say that Illinois listeners know we've had issues with a couple different states. Illinois, we used to have an issue with, and then their regulators changed over. So we no longer have problems in Illinois.
Wonderful.
But it is a conversation with the regulators around just helping them understand what is the value of financial planning and why is it not tied to an AUM fee, because those are different value propositions and different service models. But, looking back, over the last 2 years, you've had a ton of success and are really, laying the foundation for growth. If you look back, over those 24 months, what would you say has been maybe your greatest achievement and maybe also your greatest failure that maybe listeners could learn from?
Yeah, so I would say the one success has really been the ability to grow. So through all of the things that we're doing, I think that has been, we've been able to see that we are growing and we are able to attract prospective clients, and that can continue. And I would say the success in that is just being able to show ourselves that we can do it. And so that's exciting that we can take care of clients well. And so I would say just knowing that it's hard in the moment when you're starting some of these things up, and it is absolutely time consuming. But I would say the biggest success is just looking back and seeing where we've come from and saying we can do this. I would say the biggest failure, I'm going to say, is really, I think that the business as it is, while I do believe that we do a great job for clients and they, are obviously why we exist in our business, I would say that I'm not quite yet satisfied with our, the model of our service. I actually think that I want it to be much more proactive, even more than it is. And I think we have a vision for a lot more things that we want to put into place so that clients feel like they're taken care of, even better. I don't necessarily think that they would say that they're not, but I think I have a vision for, being the best advisor and being able to sell our services, because I know that our clients are working with the best advisor out there. And I want to be able to say that because I really believe that every system, every process, and everything is in place. So I would say that we're not there yet. And so I think, to me, I would say that's our biggest failure, even though that I know, it takes time and to make it what we want. But I think, I'd say that's probably it. I don't know that that's a failure, but I think just learning from everything you're doing and realizing that there's going to be, little things that happen that you say, okay, I need to do that differently next time. And obviously there's a lot of little moments like that. So I think just picking yourself up and saying, it's okay, move forward. We'll do it better next time. And then finding that you do. So
that is probably the common thread amongst successful entrepreneurs. Is anytime I ask about failure, people are like, but it wasn't a failure. I learned from it. And it's like, you are absolutely right. And the ability to learn from failure, and that, it is the cliche, it's only a failure if you didn't learn from it. But we all have missteps. And I think it's easy to see the, what we like to call the rainbows and unicorns side of running a business. But it is hard and it is a challenge, especially, you're working with your husband and you've got a kid and you're growing this business. I mean, there are a lot of challenges that are going on. So I guess my final question is just, how do you take care of yourself? That you do have so much going on, and how do you ensure that you and your husband, that you're taking care of your mental health, that you're taking care of your relationship health? Like how do you, I'll stop there. How do you just be sure that you're being well?
That's good. I think that's something that at the beginning of this year, I really started to focus on. So I think a month ago, when we really started looking at our growth and we looked at, how many prospective clients are coming in, and you get to the point where you're like, oh, if they didn't become a client, that's okay. You eventually get to that point because you're growing and it wasn't a great fit, for them to become a client. And once you get to that point, I think you realize there's so many parts of life. And I think a lot of people start their businesses because they want flexibility. They want to be able to spend time, taking their kids to and from school. And that's what I want, that flexibility to go eat lunch with Emma, to be able to be involved in school activities and to see her. And so I think those are reasons, probably the driving reasons why we say we want this business to be bigger than ourselves, because I'm feeling the weight. I'm feeling, we just came out of just kind of tax season, helping clients get through that. And then all of a sudden we got 5 new clients, and I'm doing this marketing strategy workshop and the Pause conference. And I'm trying to catch my breath and just, to be honest. And I know that it's just a season. I know it's just for a few more weeks, but I think it's moments like this when you see yourself really tired, busy, and saying, this isn't what I want. And I know that it is just at this moment, but if this isn't what we want, because I do want us to be taking care of our health, spiritually, mentally, all of those things, our relationship with each other. So we try to have date nights where it's just the two of us. Sometimes, that's, Emma's staying with grandma as we have a client meeting, and our date is, to and from there, or picking up dinner in between. But I think those are things that we want to get better at. I wouldn't say that they're bad, but I think taking the weight off of just our shoulders and adding other people to the firm, while it seems like it's going to add more work and more of our time, if the people that we're adding are team members that we know can handle that weight and the management of, their own part of the firm, then that is going to take the weight off of our shoulders. Some of the things like health, a month ago, or I would say in January, I started with a friend and we'd wake up at 5 a.m. and we'd make sure that we're exercising at the same time just to get it done in the morning every day. And so building in that accountability from other people who are going to ask you those hard questions, or if you haven't seen them in a while, they're going to be like, hey, maybe you've been a little busy, we need to get together, or making time for those things. That is what I would say is most important to me, is when I have the time to do them, then I know those things are happening and I feel healthy. When I don't have time to do that and I'm too busy and I'm stressed and I can't catch my breath to make time for those things, then I know we're not in a healthy place. So that's, I would say, how I've kind of judged it, or how I could put into words when I know we are or aren't, keeping a healthy balance.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It's so important for entrepreneurs to pay attention to themselves and to take care of themselves, and that's physically, spiritually, emotionally, in your relationships, because in the end, your business and your client work will suffer if you are not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So as we're coming to a close, I'll ask you the final question. And that is, if there is one piece of advice that you wish you could go back and give your younger self, what do you think that one piece of advice would be?
Yeah, so I would tell my younger self that if there is something you want to learn, experience, do, or become, you absolutely can. However, you won't do it all by yourself. Be grateful, appreciative, and thankful for the people who will help you all along the way, whether that's faith, family, friends, colleagues, and our clients, because all of those people are helping you to go and grow and become what you are.
Fantastic. I love it. Thank you, Michelle, so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your expertise and what you've been up to. And yeah, it's super exciting. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, Alan.
XYPN's Can't Miss annual conference returns to St. Louis in September 2019. This event is jam-packed with valuable content for new firm launchers and established firm owners alike. Take a much-needed break from working in your business to work on your business and connect with like-minded advisors leading the financial planning movement. Go to XYPlanningNetwork.com/XYPN Live Radio to grab your pass today. You do not want to miss this. Be sure to join our VIP community at XYPlanningNetwork.com/VIP. Hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with myself and Kitsis, and to finally find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to XYPlanningNetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.